An all-terrain crane has to satisfy two very different sets of limits. At the job site, lifting capacity depends on boom length, working radius, counterweight, and support. On the road, axle load becomes just as important. For several of Liebherr's largest mobile cranes, 12 tons per axle has been an important transport configuration. It is not a universal European road limit. Permits and national rules still vary. But as an engineering target, it creates a simple problem. Every ton added to the boom, carrier, outriggers, or superstructure has to be accounted for before the crane reaches the job. That is what makes these machines interesting. The biggest number on the load chart tells you what a crane can lift under ideal geometry. It does not tell you how many parts must travel separately, how much ballast has to arrive behind it, or how long the crew needs before the first lift can begin. The LTM 1500-8.1 put 500-ton capacity on 8 axles. Its successor raised that figure to 700 tons while reducing setup penalties. The LTM 1750-9.1 carries its complete 52-meter telescopic boom on public roads. The older LTM 1800 shows what the same problem looked like when a telescopic boom weighing around 60 tons had to travel separately. And the LTM 1100 9.1 pushes the concept to 1,200 tons with a 100-meter telescopic boom. So the real question is not simply how large an all-terrain crane can become. It is how much of that crane can still travel efficiently enough to work somewhere else tomorrow. Liebherr introduced the 8-axle LTM 1500-8.1 at Bauma in 1998. Its maximum rating was 500 tons at a 3-meter radius, and buyers could choose either a 50-meter or 84-meter telescopic boom. With additional lattice equipment, maximum lifting height reached roughly 142 meters. But one of the numbers that best explains the design is 96 tons. That was the crane's weight in an 8x12-ton axle load configuration. For a machine in the 500-ton class, keeping the road-going package within that target helped make the LTM 1500 useful across a wide range of jobs instead of limiting it to projects with unusually forgiving transport conditions. The two boom options widened that range further. The shorter boom suited heavy work closer to the carrier, while the 84-meter version provided much greater reach for jobs where height mattered more. Y-guying could be added to improve lifting performance with the longer boom. The value of that flexibility becomes clearer at Dresden's Alberthofen. A heavy lift operation there involved moving large industrial components from low loaders onto ships. The heaviest piece was a steam turbine weighing 214 tons. One LTM 1500-8.1 worked in tandem with an LTM 1750-9.1. The LTM 1500 carried 102 tons of the turbine, while the larger crane took 112 tons. Because tandem lifts require both machines to remain safely within their permitted load range, the operation was planned, so neither crane exceeded 80% of its available lifting capacity. The pair raised the turbine from the transporter, moved it over the dock, and lowered it toward the vessel for shipment to Copenhagen. That is a more useful picture of the LTM 1500 than its 500-ton maximum alone. Its job was not to lift 500 tons. Its job was to arrive at an industrial port, work precisely with another large crane, and control more than 100 tons of a component, valuable enough to justify moving by ship. That combination of lifting capacity, road mobility, and configuration flexibility helped the LTM 1500 remain in production for 23 years. When production ended in 2021, Liebherr had built 626 units. Its replacement would keep the same 8-axle format, but raise maximum capacity by another 200 tons. The LTM 1650-8.1 is rated at 700 tons at a 3-meter radius and can use either a 54-meter or an 80-meter telescopic boom. The larger capacity is obvious. The more important development was how Liebherr tried to prevent that extra performance from creating an equally large transport and setup penalty. With the 54-meter telescopic boom and front outriggers fitted, the crane can travel in a 12-ton per axle configuration. The rear outrigger assembly travels separately and is installed after the carrier reaches the site. The LTM 1650 also uses Liebherr's single-engine concept. Instead of carrying another engine solely for the crane's superstructure, the carrier engine powers the crane hydraulics through a mechanical drive system. That reduces duplicated machinery and saves weight. Then there is varioballast, which allows the counterweight radius to be adjusted hydraulically. A job for BKL in Germany showed why that matters. The crane had been sent to dismantle sections of a roughly 150-year-old railway bridge during a night operation. Space was already tight, and a change in the site arrangement left a newly positioned bridge structure close to the crane. The original ballast setup created a clearance problem. With 135 tons of counterweight, the ballast package would interfere with the structure as the crane slewed. Instead, the crew reduced the counterweight to 115 tons and adjusted the ballast to its maximum radius. Using less ballast made the package physically lower, giving the superstructure enough clearance to rotate beneath the obstruction. The crane then removed bridge sections weighing about 55 tons at a working radius of 23 meters. The setup process was equally important. Because the rear outrigger box is removed for road travel, the crane uses an additional support cylinder to install the roughly 9-ton assembly without requiring another crane. Quick-release connections complete the process. The operator reported that the LTM 1650 was standing on all 4 outriggers after about 30 minutes. That is where the engineering becomes practical. Removing equipment saves transport weight, but only if the crew can reinstall it without turning every relocation into a long assembly project. The LTM 1650 increased maximum capacity from 500 to 700 tons while attacking that problem through removable components, single-engine architecture, and adjustable ballast. The next step was even more visible, an 800-ton class crane capable of carrying its complete 52-meter telescopic boom on its own carrier. The LTM 1750-9.1 has 9 axles and a 52-meter telescopic boom, and that entire boom can remain on the carrier for travel on public roads. At this size, that is a significant logistical advantage. A boom transported separately needs another vehicle, another loading operation, and another assembly step before lifting can begin. Keeping the complete telescopic boom on the crane removes one major component from that chain. The LTM 1750 originally entered the market in the 750-ton class. After Liebherr recalculated its load charts, an upgrade to 800 tons became available in 2020. Maximum hoist height is about 152 meters with the appropriate lattice equipment. But one of its more interesting jobs involved only 40 tons. In Hamburg's historic Speicherstadt, an LTM 1750 was used to install a steel and glass skywalk for miniature Wunderland. The structure was about 25 meters long and had to cross over the copper roof of a 6-story historic warehouse before being lowered into place between the buildings. The difficult figure was not the weight. It was the 48.5-meter working radius. The location also created a problem beneath the outriggers. Hamburg's old warehouse district stands on timber pile foundations, so the ground loading from a crane of this size could not be treated casually. A thick layer of sand, large crane mats, and support plates were prepared to distribute the load over roughly 100 square meters. The crane was assembled with 204 tons of ballast and a 49-meter luffing lattice jib. From the operator's position, the skywalk had to travel up and over the roof before being lowered between the historic brick facades. Long guidelines helped control the suspended structure during the move. It was a 40-ton lift performed by an 800-ton class crane, yet the job still demanded extensive preparation. That difference matters. Maximum capacity describes only one point on a load chart. Real lifting work is dictated by the combination of load, radius, boom configuration, ground conditions, and available space. The LTM 1750 solved one part of the logistical problem by taking its complete telescopic boom on the road. It did not eliminate ballast trucks, lattice equipment, support mats, or site engineering. It simply removed one of the largest pieces from the separate transport operation. That is the modern solution. Several decades earlier, Liebherr faced almost the same problem with the LTM 1800, but the boom was too heavy to come along. The LTM 1800 belongs to an earlier generation of heavy, all-terrain crane design. Introduced in the late 1980s, it offered an 800-ton maximum rating at a 3-meter radius. With additional derrick and superlift equipment, lifting performance could reach the 1,000-ton range. Its telescopic boom extended to 60 meters. The problem was that the boom itself weighed roughly 60 tons, so it traveled separately. Before a lifting job, the road-going carrier and the telescopic boom had to arrive as different transport units. Other equipment, including counterweight and attachments, added further loads to the logistics plan. At the site, the carrier had to be positioned and supported before the boom could be taken from its transporter and connected to the superstructure. That creates a useful comparison with the newer LTM 1750. Both machines occupy roughly the same headline capacity class. But decades of engineering allowed the 9-axle LTM 1750 to carry its complete 52-meter telescopic boom on public roads. The LTM 1800 had no such option. Its 60-meter boom was heavy enough to require a secondary transport operation every time the crane relocated. That does not make the older design unsuccessful. It shows how difficult the road mobility problem already was when engineers began pushing telescopic all-terrain cranes into the 800-ton class. The LTM 1800 also used separate engines for the carrier and crane superstructure, another contrast with the single-engine architecture later adopted on machines such as the LTM 1650. And the basic carrier proved durable enough to live beyond its original role. Liebherr later used the LTM 1800 undercarriage as the basis for LG 1550 lattice boom mobile cranes. The important difference is straightforward. The LTM 1750 keeps its main boom on the carrier. The LTM 1800 has to transport it as cargo. The final crane increases both lifting capacity and boom length so dramatically that separating major components once again becomes unavoidable. The LTM 11-1200-9.1 is rated at 1,200 tons at a radius of 2.5 meters. Its telescopic boom reaches 100 meters. With lattice extensions, maximum hoist height reaches 188 meters. Those figures put it beyond every other crane in this group, but they also make its transport requirements more demanding. The LTM 11-1200 uses different driving configurations depending on the route and site. At this scale, major components can be separated, so the transport package can meet the restrictions of the roads it has to use. The benefit becomes clear once the crane is assembled. At Geldorf in southern Germany, an LTM 11-1200 worked on a hybrid energy storage project that combined wind turbines with elevated water storage basins. The foundations themselves rose about 40 meters above the surrounding ground. Before the wind turbines could be completed, large construction cranes had to be assembled on top of those elevated structures. An LTM 11-1200 placed 3 of them. The heaviest component of each construction crane was its main jib, weighing about 23 tons. But the larger lifting challenge came during construction of the lower tower sections. There, the mobile crane handled loads of up to 90 tons at a working radius of 26 meters. That radius existed because a large water storage basin surrounded the tower. It is a useful contrast with the crane's headline rating. The 1,200-ton maximum is achieved extremely close to the carrier at 2.5 meters. At Geldorf, The hook had to work more than 10 times farther away while still handling substantial structural components. That is why a long boom system matters. The crane has to provide useful lifting capacity after the load moves away from the ideal geometry printed beside the maximum rating. Liebherr's Y-guying system significantly increases lifting performance on the telescopic boom, particularly in long boom configurations. Combined with the 100-meter telescopic boom and lattice extensions, it allows the LTM 11-1200 to work at heights that would otherwise demand a very different crane setup. There is still a price for that performance. Counterweight has to arrive. Large boom components and attachments may require separate transport. The ground has to be prepared. Permits and route planning remain part of the operation. The LTM 11-100 does not make heavy lift logistics disappear. It makes 1,200-ton class telescopic lifting capacity transportable enough to be deployed from one major project to another. That is the point where an all-terrain crane reaches the edge of what the word mobile can reasonably describe. These cranes show why the largest number on a load chart never tells the whole story. More lifting capacity usually means more boom, more structure, more counterweight, and more equipment that has to reach the same site before the lift can begin. The real achievement is not simply building a crane capable of lifting hundreds of tons. It is making that capacity practical enough to move, assemble, and use again on the next job. Which would you value more in a heavy lift fleet, the highest possible capacity, or the crane that reaches the site and becomes operational with the least logistical effort? Subscribe to MEGAMASS for more machines built around problems ordinary equipment cannot solve.